Waiting on YouTube. All right. So, welcome everyone to the launch of the Keith Haring pop-up book. We have with us Rostin Meyer, who is the publisher. We have Gil Vasquez, who is the director of the Keith Haring Foundation. Simon Arispe, who is the paper engineer. We'll hear more about that. And the moderator is Dave Mowers. So please give them a warm welcome. My name is Greg Newton. I am the co-founder, along with my partner, Don Jokum, of the Bureau of General Services Queer Division, which is the space you are in right now. The Bureau is an all-volunteer independent queer bookstore that we founded in 2012. We've been here at the LGBT Community Center since 2014. Speaking of volunteers, Jeffrey Archer is our volunteer helping us out today. So as an all-volunteer organization, we are dependent on sales and donations to keep this boat afloat. So I'm going to pass a bag for donations. This is especially if you know you won't be buying a book or other items. We ask you to make a donation if you're able to. So there's some cash in the bag. That's interesting. Yeah, we need. Please help us get new equipment. There's also a QR code on the back if you want to give on Venmo. And for those of you online, you can give on Venmo at EGSQD. And if you're not already on our email list and you would like to be, you can sign up for that at the back of the room or on our website, egsqd.com. Our regular bookstore hours are Wednesdays through Sundays from 1 to 7 p.m. And then we often stay open late when we have events. But on weekends, we often do afternoon events such as this. And we do keep a very busy calendar. So please sign up for that newsletter or check out the events on the website. So before we get started, I wanted to read a land acknowledgement and a statement of support for the people of Palestine. So the Bureau acknowledges that our organization operates on the unceded land of the Munsee Lenape. We encourage you to join the Bureau in signing up to make a monthly donation to the American Indian Community Houses Mannahatta Fund. The Mannahatta Fund, according to its website, is an invitation to all settlers and non-native speakers who wish to acknowledge the legacy of theft and genocide that comprise the history of New York City and the United States. And you can find out more at mannahattafund.org. I also wanted to read a statement that we wrote in February in response to Writers Against the War on Gaza, inviting us to join the Palestinian campaign for the academic and cultural boycott of Israel. As queers, we know the pain of being cast out. We have been and continue to be despised by many, even by our own parents, families, and communities of origin. We have been and continue to be deemed deserving of death. This reality invokes in many of us a deep empathy with others who are likewise seen as not fully human, but as problems to be solved, questions for which the answer is ultimately elimination and erasure. As we watch the ongoing genocide of Palestinians by the state of Israel, carried out with the full support of our government and funded by our tax dollars, we witness the inevitable results of defining a people solely as a threat to the safety and well-being of those deemed inherently worthy of life. This horror compels us to speak out, not only against the current bombardment and siege of Gaza by the state of Israel, but against the historical and ongoing violent displacement of Palestinians by Zionists and the conditions of occupation and apartheid under which Palestinians have been forced to live for over 75 years. In response to the invitation by Writers Against the War on Gaza, the Bureau of General Services Queer Division has committed to following the guidelines for the Palestinian Campaign for the Academic and Cultural Boycott of Israel, which advocates for a boycott of Israeli academic and cultural institutions for their deep and persistent complicity in Israel's denial of Palestinian rights as stipulated by international law. And we have endorsed the larger boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement. Something that Keith did very well, I think, was to bring activism and joy together. When I first went to the pop shop in 1988, one of the things I bought was my Free South Africa t-shirt. And I was very moved by Keith and his work, as I'm sure many of you were as well. So that is something that continues to inspire me. I'm now going to hand the mic over to Dave Mowers, and we're going to get started with this discussion. And as you may know, there will be a signing afterward in the Keith Haring bathroom. So you can purchase the book here, as well as the poster or card, and get it signed in the Keith Haring bathroom afterward. And then there's a reception downstairs. So please give our guests a welcome again, and we'll get started.
Hi, my name is Dave Mowers. Thank you so much for having us here. We have a publisher, we have a foundation director, and we have a paper engineer here. And you may wonder what qualifies me to be sitting here. There's really no reason that I'm here except that I'm a fan. I'm a fan of the artist. I'm a fan of Keith, and I'm a super fan of Simon Arispe, who you will meet, who helped bring this book to life. I want to say we're really lucky to be sitting at the center. We're really lucky for this project to be sitting here. And for many of us, we know that we are just really lucky every time we're here. And I think that that has a lot to do with the spirit of this book and the work. And maybe that's something we'll talk about as we go. I think the other thing I wanted to remind you of is that Keith would be 66 by my count, which puts him in my dating pool. He would currently be younger than my first husband and only slightly older than I am now. He was a dynamic presence in New York. He was part of my story. His art called me to be here. And as I started walking around New York, it was on the walls. It was, on posters and paper around me. We all learned how to draw it because we thought it was cool. I made work in the theater, and every time I had to tell a story that was happening in New York, I made sure that we ripped off some Keith Haring and put it on the wall, right? So that everyone would know this is New York and it's contemporary and they're hip, they're artists. And so it's fascinating to me to be looking at the work that was a part of just my life and now is a part of the pantheon of arts. There's something about this work that's keeping it so alive and playful. And I'm really interested to hear about how that's come to be, what we do to lift Keith up as an artist in the pantheon, and what we do to keep Keith close to us as just a fact in our lives. With that in mind, we're going to talk for maybe 40 minutes, and then we'll open it up for some questions. So please think of what you want to ask. And we'll just jump in. I wanted to pose a question that I'll ask to all three of you, which is, can you tell me about how the project came to be in your mind from your role? And so I thought I'd start with publisher and say, how did it come to be?
So I've been making publishing pop-up books with artists and foundations for a little over 10 years. Been friends with Simon most of that time. It has come up a long time ago, the idea of doing a Keith Haring book, and we never really kind of could navigate make that happen. So around during the pandemic, there was an app called Clubhouse, which was kind of like a voice-based chat. And in Clubhouse, there's an artist named Keith Walliger, whose name is Eyes, EYEZ. And he introduced me to Nicole, who's sitting here. And I had just kind of signed a deal with the Warhol Foundation in 2021 to do a book with them. And this came up in conversation on this app, and Keith said, "Do you want to do a Keith Haring book too?" And I remember thinking, that's just not possible. It's like, how's that going to happen? And turns out Nicole said, "I can put you in touch with Gil," and one thing led to another, and I got in touch, and we actually, it took a while to kind of iron out all the details, but that's how it happened. And it's what I've learned in the years that I've been doing publishing is just kind of like, if you want something to happen, you can ask, and the people around you, even if you don't necessarily know them, a lot of times they'll say yes, and it's pretty amazing what can come out of just you asking for some help. So that's kind of how it came to be from my point of view.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Gil, maybe that sets up how you thought about it, but what did it mean to the foundation and how did it start?
Well, it's interesting. I do want to acknowledge Nicole. She was the one that, if not for her, this book would not exist. So thank you, Nicole. It's interesting. The book idea came at a time when I had just sort of taken the mantle as director. It's quite unsure of myself at the moment. My predecessor had been in the position for 30 plus years and left huge shoes, to say the least. Shouts to Julia Gruen. And I asked, when the idea came up about the pop-up book, I asked our, members of our staff who have been with us for 20 plus years. And I think the only other pop-up book we had ever done was a Luna Luna book. So they all kind of thought, oh, it'd be interesting. Let's see, what it leads to. So I think we got sent some examples of their work. And I think they sent us a book dedicated to cannabis. And when I opened the pop-up book and a gigantic bong popped up, I thought Keith would have been tickled pink. And I thought for sure this is like, okay, no, Keith would have absolutely loved this. So I feel like these are the right people to do this pop-up book.
It's awesome. So Simon, how does it begin for you?
So for me, I think I have been a paper engineer for like 15, almost 20 years. And one of the books that I've always wanted to do would be a Keith Haring book. Like that, for me, it just seems like the gold standard of, something I'd want to translate from like 2D into pop-up form. And Ross and I have known each other for almost 10 years. And when he said, he was thinking about doing a Keith Haring book, I kind of just jumped on it and said, I want to do it. I want it, my book, like let me paper engineer all of it. I really had a lot of vision of how I would want to do it.
So before I dive in a little more to the book, I just want to ask for some clarification. What's the role of Keith Haring's foundation? What's the mission of the foundation and what is it set up to do?
So Keith, really had the foresight to set up a foundation before he passed away. He was quite aware of his mortality at the time. And usually what happens in cases like, an artist, they don't get a chance to set up their affairs before they pass. So Keith was quite mindful of that, set up his foundation. And what he wanted to do, first and foremost, was to help people that were suffering from the effects of HIV/AIDS. He cared quite a lot about children as well. So that is in essence what the foundation was set up to do, is to help folks that are still struggling with HIV and, to help enrich the lives of children.
Thanks. I think it's really important just to track, like, what is the foundation's responsibility to an artist who's no longer here, right? So I appreciate the context there. So here's a question that each of the three of you is involved in. So with such a body of work, how do you decide which Keith Haring pieces go into a pop-up book?
So
Awesome.
yeah, I'll start. So, you know, when most pop-up books have generally 5 to 6 spreads. Usually the first spread and the last spread are the big kind of wow factor, you know, that's the biggest, or it's got the most impressive, complicated engineering. So that's kind of like something that we do with all books anyways. So it was really a lot of just Simon and I looking at all the whole body of Keith Haring's work and figuring out, you know, for example, what's on the cover, like these are some of the most iconic pieces that the kind of grid series. So we knew we were gonna, in some fashion, have those in the book. And a lot of it just going through, you know, some of the archives and picking a good flow. So we didn't want to have, you know, really colorful piece like this right next to another colorful piece. So it just kind of worked out, you know, we would give lists to the foundation for them to review, picking out, trying to stick with images that are some of his most well-known. There's a lot of very interesting images that we thought would make cool pop-ups, but were not as well-known. There's some kind of strange things going on that we didn't put in the book. And then one thing that I still really like, and I don't regret not putting them in, are the subway chalk drawings that Keith did. So originally we were going to have that be the one spread in the book that was black and white. It ended up being the Marriage of Heaven and Hell that kind of took its place. So a lot of it is, you know, figuring out what pieces we want and then what is a good flow for the book. Yeah.
That's all the time we have. Thanks. Hey, we're back. Simon, what do you think?
Well,
as you go through?
I was just thinking, I wanted to maybe show the book a little bit, because maybe some people haven't seen it.
Yeah, I was gonna do that next, yeah.
Oh.
So Simon, take us through the book for a minute.
So for us, I think the way we kind of looked at like how we should consider the pop-up was to really think about, as Rostin said, the flow, but just thinking about like the different, you know, you suddenly get access to all of Keith Haring's archive, which was kind of an amazing and daunting task. And all of a sudden you have to pick 6 to 8 pages out of, you know, hundreds. And so for us, we wanted to do kind of give a breadth of his work, you know, and really we thought, you know, there's a couple styles we really wanted to do, a couple styles we felt would really lend themselves to pop-up books, which means kind of, they're big, they're wow, they're moving, they're exciting. And so those are the kind of decisions that we're making as we do this is, thank you, is kind of what is going to translate well. And as Rostin said, the chalk drawings was one of the ones that we really wanted to do. We had these whole ideas of like chalk getting drawn as you open the page. And we just ended up doing something that didn't. So yeah. For example, the grid page, like we really just wanted to play with that idea of life and fun and things moving as you kind of see it. And so those are these kind of important things for us. And then for me, I'd say as a paper engineer is, you know, how do you make something gigantic? How do you make something big and wild and weird and, you know, over the top? So those were the decisions we were making. And then I think also, you know, doing things like the pink triangle, making sure to make choices that talked about Keith Haring's work in activism, being just a queer man, and being a queer man myself, like, you know, having that be an important part of this book and of this legacy. Like, I wouldn't want to leave that out. So those were the decisions we made.
Go business rule. Big clap, do it again. And how does the foundation help? Or what is the foundation worried about when some artists come up going like, these are great, let's do these?
What I enjoyed about the process was that it was a real collaboration. We tried to stay out of the way as much as possible. But there were instances where we thought, okay, well, maybe it was more addition by subtraction, more than us asking them to add anything. And you know, as it went along and as we're getting shown how these things open up and the sort of you know, you don't see the final product early on. You see like a moving sketch of it. So that was really super interesting for us as well. And just to see, you know, this, I don't know, like this analog thing. This is not on a screen, right? The reaction that you got when he popped it up, it's like a wow factor. It's not something that you can get, you know, from a screen. And it, you know, it just makes it all the more special.
So you gave a little clue. You said, oh, there's some weird images and there's some images that get left out. There's also some really challenging, really sexy images that I imagine would be tricky to put in a book that's being published. I know that that's something that came up for you guys. Rustin, do you have some thoughts about some of the material and how it found its way or didn't into the book?
Yeah, so for example, we,
I'm going to hold that up for you.
some of you know, you'll see it, we actually made a pop-up diorama that folds into the same dimensions as the bathroom that's upstairs from where we're sitting right now. And this is included in the special edition. So, you know, I've done a lot of kind of adult pop-ups, but this is pushing the, you know, stepping over the line for sure. So during production, you know, Simon and I, the book printer, we asked them if they could make it. They never said no, but we also kind of never saw the mock-ups from them. And after 10, 15 emails, we just never heard back. And we started thinking, well, we're gonna have to figure out a way to get this printed, cut, and we'll probably have to hand assemble them here in the States because they're probably not gonna be able to do it. Turns out that the printer's based in Thailand. They print and cut everything in Thailand, and they ship it over to Laos, which is where their assembly plant is. It turns out that the assembly team in Laos refused to do it because of the content. So the printer ended up training their printing team to actually assemble the Once Upon a Time piece, which is amazing. And we, like I said, we were kind of planning on we're gonna have to hand assemble that, that's fine. But it wasn't until after all this happened that they kind of explained that was the situation. And, you know, it's still amazing to me that we actually pulled off a pop-up of the famous Once Upon a Time bathrooms with all this interactivity and all this kind of extra stuff that Simon added in. Simon, do you want to talk about the photography aspect of making that happen?
Yeah.
Because I think that's pretty interesting.
So yeah, as you know, as Rostin was saying, it was kind of a challenge to fully make this possible. But I think for us, it was really exciting to make something that was really a physical place that you know, is 4 feet away. And we were really lucky to get to do that because the center gave us access to, there's a lot of photos of the bathroom, but they're all kind of from the ground. And so the center gave us access to the bathroom and gave us a ladder and gave us, you know, some time in there to just photograph it. So me and my friend Lauren Koch, who I think is maybe in this room, maybe she didn't make it, but we just got to spend an afternoon just photographing it and lighting it and really taking the time to get reproductions of it so that we could then translate this into the book, and it wouldn't have really worked otherwise. So
you geek out a little harder and talk about like why the photos you took are different than the ones you could just buy or download. Like what's important about it as you go to make something go 3D.
Right. So I think for us, like we wanted to, if you were to take a photo from the ground, it would be in a different perspective. It would just not really be true to form. And for us, we really wanted to take Keith Haring's work and do it like really strong justice and have high res everything and stuff. So for us to be able to take photos and really use them for our purposes was really instrumental.
Yeah, because you have to build from it, right?
Oh, right. So you have to build from it. So basically, yeah. And then from that, kind of a little bit about my process is that I will take those photos. And so in terms of like other Keith Haring art or with the bathroom, I'll take those photos and I will then print them out on cardstock just with my little, you know, brother black and white printer. And I start cutting them out and sort of playing around scissors and tape and glue and start to create kind of the sculptures out of that.
So I know what parts of the bathroom I would like to make 3D. But you made lots of choices about 3D. What suggested itself to you that like what made you choose the things that you're like, this should come out and this should be present and this should pop up, this can stay 2-dimensional? How did you choose?
In the bathroom or in general?
Well, in the bathroom, but then I'll ask you about another.
All right, we'll start with the bathroom, because it's here.
Yeah.
So in the bathroom, we do, as we said, it has some explicit content. I think we counted 36 dicks.
37.
37 dicks. Which is fair that they, had some reservations about printing and assembling it. But for me, it is playing around with all of Keith's work has been about playing around with the life that you see in his work. The life you see in his 2D work is just, there's always movement, there's always things changing. And so my job is to then translate that and really, if someone's jumping, how do I employ the mechanisms that I know how to do to make that jumping movement, to make that moving motion and make it feel very real and very alive. And so I think for the bathroom and all of the book, that's been my goal.
Can I ask you to open to the pink triangle? I'll open up again, but. So I want to share that when I got my copy of this, notice how I've made it Simon now holds it for me. Thanks. But when I got my copy of this, I was delighted, but I was also deeply moved by this. And this is a two-dimensional image that I know really well. What was it that made you choose this, and why this form for it? What does the depth add? What does the depth add to the flat image?
So I will say, so I'd say this is probably my favorite page in the book, because I do think there is an important significance to it. And we went back and forth a lot about different things we wanted to do in the book. There's, Keith has a lot of explicit work and a lot of work about AIDS activism. And we wanted to add something. So this is what we kind of chose because it is that figurehead, that pink triangle. And for me, what I really like about it is the fact that you suddenly have, it's a pink pyramid. It's physical. It feels heavy. It feels weighty. It feels really like kind of tragic. Like it feels, really strong. And so I think for me, that was a really nice achievement to make something that has that kind of density and has that kind of that if you can see this and it makes you feel a little bad, then I've kind of done my job.
Yeah, from the original work, there's body after body after body. It's something different when it's like person after person after person, right? It's just it's really breathtaking, Simon. It's a really big idea. So I wonder, when this comes across to a foundation, what is it like in the office when this one comes back and you're like, here you go, iconic image, we're gonna do this.
So this was one that was addition by subtraction. In the original piece that I saw, inside the pyramid, there was something else going on. And we thought, wait, this particular work, it's almost reverential. It's out of deep respect for, what Keith was going through in his time, what his community was going through in his time, in their time. And we thought this should not be added on to in any way, or attention taken away from what this is saying. So that's really one instance of addition by subtraction.
Yeah.
And I think they pulled it off beautifully.
Hand it over to the publisher then, Rostin. So I imagine that puts you in the position of, you get notes saying, no, you can't. And then you have to go back to, we know Simon is your friend, but also he's put in scores of hours on this particular image. Your job is to go, no, they're taking it away. What's that process like?
In this specific case, it was relatively simple because I won't say exactly what it was. You guys can ask us maybe afterwards. But it was a very simple kind of an extra piece of paper inside that if you kind of peek through the figures on the pink triangle side of the pyramid, you could just see it. It wasn't obvious. But so it was kind of almost like a little bit of an Easter egg that Simon and I wanted to put in there. So then when we got the feedback from the foundation, it's like, oh, well, we've got to pull that out. And, we never said this. There was other Easter eggs we wanted to maybe add. But then after, we removed that piece from the pyramid, we're just going to keep everything really authentic to the original art. And I think there was one other thing on the House and Bowery mural page that we removed. at some point, but in this case, it was relatively easy to just kind of remove that. That's not always the situation with a pop-up, you know, if it's something that just doesn't work, a lot of times you just have to re-engineer it. And then you're sometimes almost starting over from scratch. So this is why pop-up books can take 6 months to a year, sometimes longer, to finalize and get ready for production.
I wanted to ask you, that's a segue to where I wanted to go next, which is, can you explain the publisher's role in a pop-up book and the many kinds of work that you're having to coordinate to make a 6-spread pop-up book like this?
Sure. So I'm also a paper engineer, and you know, for this book, I didn't do the engineering. I acted more as editor, but I have done engineering for some of the books, and it's a lot of, you know, it's the initial layout of figuring out what you're going to do. In the case of what I'm doing with Proposition, I'm essentially self-publishing. So I'm kind of like a one-man operation that's getting these books made. I'm doing all the marketing. I sell them pretty much exclusively online and in shops like this. You know, and the publishing aspect, to me, I've done it enough times. It's just kind of part of what I'm doing for work. For books, it's a lot more work and a bigger kind of commitment in time, energy, all of that, than doing something like just a greeting card or a series of greeting cards. These books are about, you know, the most complicated that pop-ups can get. A lot of, you know, mostly due to the spread size. When you're looking at a pop-up greeting card, they're usually relatively simple. You don't want more than 5 or 10 pieces or so. So yeah, so you know, as far as that, with the publishing aspects, it's kind of something that I've just been doing, and I'm very lucky to be able to be making pop-up books with artists that I admire, with my friends, and that people love them, because there's not many people in the world that are doing this kind of book publishing. Love it.
Are you making a move to add something?
Me about this question?
Yeah.
No.
Okay. Because here's what I'm really pushing for. Can you please just say to them, this is all handmade. Like,
So
these are assembled by hand. We talk about like, oh, we're publishing it. Oh, someone's gonna put it together. And it's like, you know, every single book is put together by a person.
yes,
Doing work.
There's not a magical machine that does the assembly. There is a magical machine that helps to make the dies that then cut every piece out, but every pop-up book you've ever seen is made by hand somewhere, which is kind of incredible if you really think about it. So, you know, it's a lot like traditional printing where there are proofs. We see them before they go into production, of course. With pop-ups, we don't have it with us today, but there's usually a white mock-up made. Sometimes that's sent to us. The printer almost always does that for them to just verify that they can replicate the paper engineering before they then go into the printing part. So it's, again, like traditional printing, but there's a couple more steps and, you know, proofs along the way. And, you know, that said, that you kind of have to design things in a way, Simon could probably speak to this a little more, in a way that in assembly, they can't screw it up, essentially. So if there's, let's say there's something that needs to go exactly at this angle on a page, you could hope and cross your fingers that they're going to glue it right in place, but what you really need to do is add a tab so it can be tabbed in, and it's always going to be exactly where it needs to be. So that's a bit of the paper engineering process, and knowing that you're going to have something go into production is designing it in a way that it's always going to work in assembly. So it's a big complicated.
So I want to, you mentioned that that people have reverence for this work, and there's the altarpiece that I want to ask about next, but I wanted you to set it up. Many people don't know about the Keith Haring altarpieces and some of the three-dimensional work. Gil, can you tell us a little bit about where these altarpieces are and how they came about and what they mean in terms of the art?
So the original bronzes, and it's interesting because these are really, it's really like the last work that Keith did. These are things that are signed Keith Haring 1990, which very few things are, because he passed away in February of 1990. It came about because Keith wanted to, get some enjoyment from all the work and money that he had made. He bought an apartment on LaGuardia Place and got a designer to come in and help him decorate the place, design the place essentially. There was a fireplace with a mantelpiece that Keith absolutely hated. It was brick, it was ugly. And the gentleman that was helping, that was designing, put some plaster of Paris over the mantle and asked Keith to just do a design and do, do what he does. And that set off a project. It's like, whoa, what if we make these things out of bronze? So it turned into the mantelpiece. It turned into a bronze panels in various patinas, bronze tables, coffee table, a high table, and the altarpiece. And these things were all done and conceived, not planned ahead of time, as was quite normal for Keith. And I think the edition number for each of the bronzes was 9. So there are 9 altarpieces scattered in the world. There's one at St. John the Divine in New York. There's one at Saint Eustache in Paris. There's one in Denver. There's one in Japan. And they're just, quite beautiful. I recently was in Paris to see the one at Saint Eustache, and it was I did not expect the emotion that overcame me in that moment. There's all this art in this old church that dates back to the 1500s, and then there's Keith's altarpiece, and it would just, I don't know, it just was super emotional for me. But yeah, that's the genesis of the bronzes and the altarpiece.
So then, Simon, maybe even go over and you could get it. Do you want to talk about how the altarpiece played into the whole project? Like, where did the idea come from? How is it coming to life here?
So I would say that's actually one that Rostin really did most of the initiative on, and like figured out kind of while we were looking at the archive, we thought about making this into a page, and it was Rostin's idea to kind of like, well, we need something for the limited edition. We need something and really to let this be kind of, the show-stopping piece and being able to make a reproduction of it, which was, just an incredible honor to be able to do that.
Rostin, what are the other features of the special edition piece that make it such an important investment?
So it is a small scale version. The original altarpiece, I believe, is about 4 feet tall. It's pretty big. And, just looking at Keith's body of work, so I always do at least one special edition of every book I release. And I saw that, so I'm like, oh my gosh, it would be so cool if we could figure out some way to make this happen. And I had a buddy of mine in Denver make a relatively crude kind of initial prototype just to present the idea to the foundation. They said yes, and then we started figuring it out. And I don't think, honestly, I'll ever top this as far as packaging goes for a book. I feel like it's an art piece on itself, onto its own. So it comes with the book with a special cover, and there's actually, you can see right here, there's some text that gives some context. And I did want to mention that throughout the book on each spread, sometimes they're hidden behind little pull-tab panels. There is text that the foundation provided to us that's kind of explains what's happening. Not always about the specific piece, but sometimes, like, I think that little panel is about Keith's activism work, not exactly about the pink triangle. So that's really helpful, and not everybody sees that. Some people just don't see that. So the special edition comes with this, one of the greeting cards, and the Once Upon a Time bathroom piece. And and there was one. The only change was actually putting the foundation's copyright. That was the only kind of feedback we got from the foundation, which is amazing.
I'm glad you shouted out to the scholarship in the book. it's such a tricky balance with Keith Haring's work, right? Because I actually don't want you to bum me out with a lot of like history and learning and teaching. I'm pretty much a basic consumer. I'm like, this book is amazing, right? But there's some great decisions made about this really simple, beautiful scholarship. Congratulations to the foundation for writing it in such a straightforward and like relevant way. So it's good for me. It's good for someone who really wants to know. I feel like when I pass it up, I'm giving it for Christmas to my nieces, young budding artists. I want them to learn. But I don't feel like I'm lecturing them because part of the fun is it's hidden, right? It's hidden, it's just right. It doesn't detract from the experience of stuff popping out at me and moving around and being fun.
Yeah, we think that way when it comes to projects like this, when it comes to the licensing that we do in the world. We think of the cute t-shirts as a gateway to learning about the activism and the seriousness of the times. If you like the shirt and it's great and it goes with your outfit, that's wonderful. But if you want to dig a little deeper, you'll learn about the legacy of this amazing man whose career essentially was a 10-year career. Man who passed away at age 31. I mean, it's insane, right? So we think of it as a gateway to learn about Keith.
Thank you. So we have a few minutes for questions. Maybe questions about how to make a pop-up, maybe questions about Keith, all the way in the back. Do you want to?
I want to ask anyone if you could press Luna Luna and how it's coming to the shed and everyone can see Keith's carousel.
So Luna Luna is essentially an amusement park that was conceived by this gentleman in Germany, I want to say. Hamburg, Austria? Germany, okay. So this guy essentially got a lot of artists together to create rides. I mean, unbelievable. Keith created a beautiful carousel that looks like he painted it yesterday. And there were so many, people, luminaries, Keith's peers, people that Keith really admired, Lichtenstein, Basquiat, Kenny Sharp, like all these artists involved in this endeavor. I don't know what happened from Hamburg, what happened, where this amusement park essentially gets shipped to Texas somehow in shipping containers and stood there for 30 years. Fast forward 30 years, someone was interested in purchasing it. And I guess whoever owned it at the time said, you can buy it, but there's no looking, you have to buy it sight unseen, the way you would at a storage facility or something like that, right? So whoever, they purchased it. I believe Drake was an angel investor in this. And they shipped this thing to Los Angeles and painstakingly put this thing back together and restored the rides. And it opened in Los Angeles, I want to say last year. Was it last year? And it was, just amazing. I mean, again, to see this thing come back to life after it was lost all those years was pretty amazing. And the fact that it will be in New York in November is also amazing. So looking forward to that.
Other questions? Yeah.
Yeah, I was in Melbourne, Australia, and there was a Keith Haring mural on the side of a building. I took a picture of it. So my question is, what brought him to travel so far around the world in such a short time of time? Where his work is everywhere like that.
Keith was quite popular. He was really popular. And the interesting thing about Melbourne is that he did the mural whenever he traveled, he tried to do something public, like a mural, like free, that it had nothing to, it was just for the community. That in Melbourne, he painted some glass at the NGV, which was essentially the front of the museum. And it was defaced there were rocks thrown at it because the Aboriginal folk thought it was like appropriating their work, which is they, had been around for thousands of years, but here comes this, this white American guy, and he's appropriating and he's getting lauded for doing what we've been doing for thousands of years. It's a little bit of a sort of misinterpretation of what Keith was doing, but Keith was, everywhere. Everywhere in the world. Everywhere in the world, he touched everywhere.
I was in London and this place called Total Refreshment Center. It was they did like different things like jazz, different creative space. And then the bathroom there, like the whole bathroom was decorated in London.
I don't know if he did a mural in London, but that might have been a homage.
Yeah.
That might have been a homage, as far as I know.
Other questions? So I just want to observe that one of the themes that each of you has said more than once in the panel is something coming back to life or something being renewed and regenerated. I'm thinking particularly how meaningful that is with work like the altars and the time of life that it was for Keith. And I'm thinking about how meaningful that is here at the center, sort of where we started and how I'm thinking we might end. And Simon, I'm really wondering what it means to you to be part of bringing the murals to life again.
Yeah, I think for me, this is one of the most important things I've done as an artist, and just being able to kind of get to know Keith Haring's work very well and see the archive and get to go through it. It's just been, I think, really important for me to just kind of grow and to be able to do faith to his work and take that time has really, helped me develop.
Gil?
When you get another artist to touch Keith's work in the way that Simon had to, there has to be a lot of trust involved. And as we saw this thing develop, that trust was just, it was so abundant. And it takes me back, to see this thing take on a new life. It takes me back to when I was here in 1989 when Keith painted the bathroom. This building looks nothing like it did. I don't know if you know. I think you have to be of a certain age, but this building looked nothing like it looks now. It was an old, broken down school building, really, essentially. So new life has been given to the mural, new life has been given to the building, and it seems to be a recurring theme.
Hey, Bill?
I think it's an absolute honor to be able to kind of be given the keys to such important artwork and the legacy of an artist. And we're not just, no offense to anybody making a t-shirt. I have many Keith Haring t-shirts myself, but we're making something new. We're creating something new with art that's existed for 30 plus years. And I think that's very special. And it's important to me as a publisher. I know, with Simon and I as paper engineers, it's just important to know that we're doing something that's important to people that may not know about pop-up books, that might not be collectors, but they're like, oh, this is cool. I've never looked at Keith Haring's artwork from this point of view before. And so yeah, thank you for letting us do this.
Honestly, thank you. So I'll bring us to a close as a super fan, just by saying thank you so much to the Bureau for hosting the event, and thank you to each of you on the panel for the work that you've put out in the world, and also for coming today to have the discussion. And thanks everybody for joining us. Please buy books. I bet Simon will sign them for you at the party. Thank you. We're good.
My boyfriend who put all of this together for this event, and
That's right, you two. It was already a boyfriend. Sorry.
So
If you've already purchased a book and you want to go get it signed, you can go straight to the Keith Haring bathroom where the signing will take place. If you would like to buy something now, we'll ask you to line up right here so that people can get in and out of the room. And then there's a reception downstairs in room 101 where you can go after you get your books. So thank you, everyone.